Are people ready to start? Looks like mostly. So it's fine. Are you? We are about to start a meeting. Thank you. Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Employment and Skills Committee of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. I'm just checking whether we are now streaming and whether we're therefore all good. Okay, fantastic. We will formally start. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. I think we have one substitution. We may have more than one. Sorry, we're just making the microphone work. Which there we are.
And there we go. Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Wakeford, and we've got Councillor Pitts in attendance for him.
Welcome, Ben. It's very nice to see you. So just that one apology. Public speakers, we have one public question which has been received by Democratic Services and will be read out in a moment. Are we doing that now? Should we cover the public question now or?
No, it's the minutes.
Okay, we'll do that a little later. And sorry. We'll go on to the minutes. So is there anybody who would like to ask any questions on the accuracy of the minutes? So, again, it's going to take a minute for the microphone to work. Keep pressing.
Am I on? Great. Yeah, just very briefly, on page 4, it refers to myself and Councillor Wade as members of Cambridge City County Council. I don't think we've declared independence just yet, so it might be worth changing that to avoid any confusion. Thank you.
Apologies.
Thank you. I'm sure we can get that corrected. I don't see any further questions on the accuracy of the minutes, so I will sign those as a correct record. And we will move on to item 3, which is public questions. So if we have received one question in advance of the meeting, which has been published on the website and circulated to committee members. If that could be read out by our governance officer, given that Councillor Bulat is not here.
Thank you, Chair. The question from Councillor Bulat is, due to historical changes in government policies on adult education and lifelong learning over the past half century, Cambridge no longer has a specialist adult education and lifelong learning centre, a function that was previously undertaken by the Cambridgeshire Collect for Arts and Technology on East Road until the late 1980s. In December 2020, the House of Commons Education Select Committee concluded adult community learning providers are the jewel in the crown of the nation's adult education landscape. We are not persuaded that the department fully grasps the value and purpose of community learning, nor does it appear that the department has a vision or strategic approach for boosting this vital area of lifelong learning. I thank the Mayor and Deputy Mayor for previous conversations on adult education and how communities like my division in Abbey could benefit from further investment in this area. Now that Marshall's Airport is consulting about what to do with its site, and now that Hills Road Sixth Form College is consulting about opening a new college north of Cambridge, what consideration has the CPCA given towards establishing a lifelong learning centre in Cambridge that is easily accessible by public transport? Furthermore, what conversations is it having with both developers and large employers on both their skills needs and their willingness to contribute towards the cost of refurbishing an existing site or building a new bespoke site for lifelong learning in Cambridge, one that again is accessible to residents living in surrounding villages via public transport? Thank you.
Thank you. And while there is a very short response, I think we would like to see a slightly lengthier one. So I've asked for officers to prepare a response to be sent to Councillor Bulat and published on the website. So that will be coming forward shortly. The next item on the agenda is the forward plan. Are there any questions or comments on the forward plan, or can we take that as noted? Okay, Solicitor's got one thing to say.
There we go. We got there eventually. Just to say that there has been a number of updates to the forward plan since these papers were published. So we will send that out to you so that you can see a fuller forward plan for the next 6 months.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, and then we will move on to item 5, which is the adult education budget impact evaluation. For members of the public to note, the committee have just spent an hour discussing this in a workshop. So I don't know how much time we want to spend on this in this meeting. I'm very happy for people to spend as long discussing it as they like. But if it seems as if we are treating this in a light touch way, we have just spent an hour discussing this impact evaluation. I will go to, I think, Pominda, who is online and is going to introduce this item. Is Pominda online? He seems to be connecting to audio. We'll give it another couple of seconds. Okay, I'm not sure that the online link is working. So I don't know whether we want to cover this. I don't know whether you could cover it, Fliss, or whether we will come back to it later in the agenda. Or Richard is now here. You can do it. Okay. Him. I think Fliss can cover it, so we'll try and get this underway. Thank you.
It works as well. So, as Councillor Nessinger has said, we have spent some time focusing on the AEB impact evaluation. So, this paper is just to provide an update on where we are. We are slightly behind in terms of timings. As you will have seen, we have appointed an external organisation to help deliver the evaluation for us. You'll be able to see in the paper that we have the methodology there, which is outlined, and also it sets out the number of different stakeholders that we will be engaging with. We have had the devolved adult education for 3 full years now, and so therefore, whilst we do an evaluation every year, this is a lot more in depth than what we have had in the past. So we are hoping that this will help inform, will give an unbiased and view on the adult education budget spend to date, but also look at what we can do to improve the devolved powers that we have in this area too. So we hope that the next Skills and Employment Committee, they will have the full findings and full report from this evaluation. Hopefully that will give enough information as of by way of introduction. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Fliss, and for stepping in at short notice. Richard, do you want to add something?
So, okay. Yeah, just to build on what Fliss has said, I mean, one of the things that's really important about this, I think, is that GM, when they have pushed in their Trailblazer devolution deal for to secure further devolution around post-16 education and other things as well, they've been able to demonstrate to government and to DFE in particular how successful devolution has been in terms of adult education budget, and they've absolutely demonstrated what's happened post devolution as compared with what happened pre-devolution. And I think this is a real opportunity for us in terms of this impact evaluation. Will be able to demonstrate for us the impact that we've had, the difference we've made, and therefore put us in a really good place in terms of further devolution, whether that happens in terms of the negotiations that we're talking to government about at the moment with the M10, and also in terms of the next general election, whatever outcome happens, arises, I think further devolution is going to be on the table. So I'm just saying, I think this is a really important piece of work for us moving forward.
Thank you very much, Richard. Richard, I think this might be your first proper attendance at the Learning, Education and Skills Committee. So for those of you who haven't met Richard before, Richard is the new Director for Education and Skills and Employment, and welcome to the committee. Okay. Thank you. I don't know whether there are further questions on this. I mean, I think it was very helpful to have the workshop, and I know that there will be a great deal of interest in that evaluation. One of the things that I'm particularly hoping comes out of it is a really strong uh, evaluation of what we're doing in comparison with what other places are doing, which will be really helpful. Nick.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the paper and obviously acknowledge that we have just had an hour which I found very helpful to be part of the process. It's really a request, and maybe not really for here, it's more for the people who will be running the consultation, is that will they be doing a direct interview with me as the mayor? Because I'd quite like one. And I don't know if it's something I can ask for, because I know that obviously there are semi-structured interviews with CPCA directors and the adult education team. But today was a fantastic opportunity to talk about sort of mayoral priorities, and I say this is which I'm very grateful that the combined authority is embedding in terms of going forward. But I would actually recommend that maybe that's something that should be forthcoming, and I'd make a request on that. But as for a first experience of the last hour, I'm very grateful for how it's moved forward. And although this idea of being monitored sometimes has a sense of, you're being monitored because you're looking for, are there problems? I think I would also put it on record that in my experience since I've been at the Combined Authority, leadership and direction of travel in terms of the adult education budget and the team who have been working in that, certainly whilst I've been here, they've been innovative. They've pushed in areas where, particularly around English as a second language, and I think it has to be acknowledged that we are, as an organisation, we are seen as a bit of a high flyer, and that, long may that continue. And I'm very much part of this going forward. Just want to put that down.
Thank you for the question. Just to say that I think Paul was very clear, who was running the workshop for the consultants before, was very clear that anybody who wants to have a one-to-one conversation with them, that would be very welcome because they're keen to hear from everybody. And I'm 100% certain that includes you, Nick. Ben, and then Viv.
Thank you. So just to say, it sounds like I'm relatively new to this committee. Well, first day today, but also to the adult education budget and the processes behind it. But yeah, really interesting meeting earlier. I just think it sounds like a really useful time to have that reflection. And I think, obviously there's a focus on what we can do differently is like a key, so one of the key things that will come out of that process, but also just to recognize the successes that's already, we've already notched up. I think the devolution has been really successful so far, and like we should use this opportunity not just to sing its praises, but also to bring it up to the next level. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Vic. Keep pressing. It'll get there.
There we go. Okay. Hi. Good morning, everybody. Yeah. Also, to comment on, look, there's a lot come out of the fact that this budget has been devolved locally, and it's been much better spent than it would have been had it been held centrally. But from my perspective, I'd like to make sure the involvement of the business board is taken into account as quite a significant, if you like, client of the adult education budget, and I'd like to make sure that they get a full opportunity to evaluate this because I think their view would be quite important. And I'm not sure what mechanism has been put in place. And I know you've got myself and Nitin from the business board, but we don't have the ability to represent the entire views of the business board. So I'd like something formal if that was possible. Thank you.
I'm sure that will be possible. I know that the business board is meeting this afternoon. And again, I think Paul's offer that he made this morning to have a meeting with any groups was a very open one, and I'm sure the business board would be able to work to organise that. Eileen. Vic, can I just say that while Eileen's making her thing work, that I think that there will be a certain amount of responsibility for the business board to follow that up with them rather than necessarily it. Okay, it's all right. It'll be picked up. Lovely. Eileen.
Yeah. This was something that was said earlier, but it's something that is very close to my heart. Is the accessibility of any training or any adult education, and that especially in some areas of the combined authority area, there are pockets where people just can't access training, and this is something that needs to be a priority to make sure that that happens.
Thank you very much, Eileen. I think that point was very well made in the discussion earlier, and it's helpful to have it made now. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. I don't see any further questions, and I think this item is for noting, so we don't need to vote on it. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to having that evaluation back, I hope, at our next meeting. So that will be excellent. The next item on the agenda is the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Careers Hub delivery focus, and Laura is introducing that one. Welcome, Laura.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everybody. I hope everyone's well. I am introducing agenda item 6, which is our Careers Hub delivery focus for 23-24. You will have all received the papers and read the papers, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail. But before I started, I just wanted to share a little bit of feedback we had from a contract review meeting at the end of last week, which recognised the impact and the steps we'd made, progress that we'd made as a careers hub. We've been operating as a full hub for the last year, and comments were made around the levels of improvement weren't expected. They weren't expecting to see what we've done, and really sort of grateful of where we've come to. So I wanted to share that. I think sometimes we don't talk enough about what we have achieved. Our plan is for this year to focus on 5 priority areas, which sits around raising the quality of careers education. It looks at supporting high quality experiences with employers. We'll be doing more around amplifying technical and vocational education. We'll be looking at how we can interface and support more targeted interventions for the economically disadvantaged, and we'll be looking at connecting provision to local economies. There are 5 areas of priority, and we will address those through building on the success that we had in 22-23, looking at the continuation of running some of the events and webinars, etc., that we hosted through 23-24. We've undertaken an activity over the summer that has RAG rated all of our schools, so we look at making sure that we will be providing that support and provision as and where is needed, so we can have some real focused improvements to those schools that perhaps aren't performing as well as others along in line with the Gatsby benchmarks. Our approach is very much a holistic one. We will be looking at undertaking activities that meet on a number of those different priorities, and looking at how we work specifically with stakeholders to influence more outcomes in line with those priority areas. We'll be looking very much around sector spotlights, so looking at our local economy, looking at where jobs are going to be accessible, and doing more in terms of resource for our careers leaders to access for young people. We'll continue to be very much aligned with the local skills improvement plan to make sure that that is at the heart of what we're doing. And we will look to build upon parental engagement. It's something that historically we haven't done as a hub, but recognising a key stakeholders that parents are. So we will look to host an event that increases that parental engagement side. The paper is relatively detailed, and I don't want to sort of go through what you may already have, so I will draw it to a close there, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, and congratulations on the excellent feedback. That's really nice to hear. Eileen.
On page 20, under Amplify Apprenticeships, Technical and Vocational Routes, it says we will offer parents the opportunity to attend a virtual parents' evening. I was just worried that some parents may not have access to the internet or to attend these virtual meetings. So will there be other meetings?
At the moment, it's because I'm sat next. at,
Absolutely. At the moment, we have this event planned in as our main piece of parental engagement, because for us to be able to do it on volume, we need to be able to access in a more virtual environment. But we will be having other activities that are perhaps organised on a school level or within a local area. But at the moment, that is the predominant way of us being able to do it. I know from sort of work that's previously happened at the start of the pandemic that whilst not everybody may have a desktop computer at home, the majority of parents will have access through a telephone or another means. So we find at the moment it is the easiest way of reaching as many people as we can. Thank you. Nick.
Thank you, Laura. Interesting, because actually, as I read through the paper and remind myself again, particularly on priority 5 in point 3.8, one of the things when I was in the talking in the hour-long session, this idea, an ambition to work closer with the districts and indeed unitary authorities via the economic developmental teams might well help, with this sort of link in with careers provision in schools and colleges. Um, have we, have you, within the combined authority, actually, as well as involving economic development teams, have we actually just done kind of direct approaches to constituent councillors across the whole of the patch? The reason I say this is that I've seen over many times, work with all my children going through local schools. It's not unusual for schools to send out requests to parents, and parents come forward, and obviously different schools maybe have more parents who are willing to do it. But as I sat in the hour before, I was thinking, it's too easy as a councillor or indeed as a mayor sometimes to sit back and just going, well, just let them get on with the economic development. That's the officers. Is there something that councillors across the combined authority area could be stepping up and working with us at the combined authority in offering up advice and indeed possibility of even being part of these careers hubs, recognizing time and time again how important skilling up the local population is, and with the view to kind of growing the economy. I'm just wondering, have we ever gone for the nuclear option of a direct approach, not just to the economic development teams, but actually to every single councillor, and saying, could you help us?
So the short answer to that is no, we haven't. But I do think it's something that with the right consideration and coordination, we could look to deploy. I think the economic development teams give us that coordinated and central point of contact, but there is absolutely no reason we couldn't look to explore further for sort of wider reaching benefits at all. Nick, can you put your
I think I'd welcome that, and I think it would be an important sort of challenge to all constituent authorities, but more importantly, the members who make them up, be that East Cambridgeshire, be that South Cambs, be it Peterborough City, an opportunity for people to see what we do at the combined authority in terms of the adult education budget and trying to bring those people in. So thank you for taking that as an idea and as a suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. Lynn.
Yes. Is it on? It's live. Oh, it's live. Good. That's excellent. Thank you very much. Um, I want to ask first of all, if I can, which schools benefit from the Careers Hub in Peterborough? Because I'm coming from Peterborough City Council, and I'm just wondering how many of our schools have benefited from the Careers Hub. I hope quite a lot. Oh, excellent. And but I was told only recently by our skills people, skills officers, that they don't necessarily get to hear about that. For the reason that, of course, many of the skills are academies, etc. In fact, the bulk of the secondary ones are. And so, would it be possible for there to be more contact between the careers hubs and the skills officers at the city council? I mean, I don't know whether that applies to the district councils as well, but they certainly aren't aware of the impact that the careers hub makes, and they need to be, of course. So if that could happen, I should be very grateful. Can I ask another point as well, please, Chair? Thank you very much. Um, when it comes to the priorities, I was looking at the um, and priority 4. I think you're dealing with that's where you're dealing with the send schools, and again, I'm not sure which of them you're dealing with. It's and if you could let me know. I don't need to know it here, but if I could know about that, please. And always remember that there's an awful lot of send work going on at the John Mansfield Centre, which is part of City College. And I don't know whether you've actually dealt with them directly and whether you report to them about it, because they have a tremendous impact on send in Peterborough, which is quite considerable. We have a lot of send children and adults actually in Peterborough. So if I could ask for that as well, and it's all about getting data as much as anything for the skills side, because they don't necessarily education and skills, the actual individual organisations don't necessarily inform each other. Do you see what I mean? And you're the connector, please. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of working with skills officers from the local councils, we'd welcome it. Absolutely. We are more than happy to share communications, share updates. And if they, wanted to attend any of the events that we organise, virtual or face to face, they would be very welcome to come along. In terms of our send communities of practice, I believe we have engaged with the John Mansfield Centre, but I can confirm that. And I will also get you a list over of the schools that we work with. We work with a number of different send schools, and we've just recently taken another 4 on this academic year. But effectively, it's eligible state funded send AP and secondary mainstream provision that are our core organisations we focus on. Thank you.
Am I on? Oh, great. So I'm doubting myself now. Right. Yes, thank you. So under priority 2 on page 19, I was just interested in the enterprise advisor roles. And I was wondering, sort of, do we have any recruitment issues for those at the moment, or do we find that we're typically able to fill those roles? And if during 2023-24, there's a tongue twister, we move to having enterprise advisors working across different schools, do we envision any issues in terms of the commitment that is perhaps expected of people, and would that impact on the recruitment issues if there are any?
Thank you. Enterprise advisors. So we have 70. The academic year we've just finished, we had 72 schools, of which we worked with approximately 63, I think it was, enterprise advisors. Not every school is ready to be matched with an advisor. It's been a metric within our contract actually that's been a little bit sticky, and that has really been more because of churn, and that's aligned to the labour market as it is at the moment. So as people are moving on to different organisations, they're perhaps not keeping the role of enterprise advisor on. So whilst I would like to see more, I think what we've been experiencing is typical of the labour market. That said, we have 2 events that we're in the process of organising for next year, which are to attract and recruit more enterprise advisors. And in terms of retention of enterprise advisors, we are altering the expectations around that role. So historically, it's been 1 enterprise advisor matched to a school. We might have 2 EAs in a school, but they work predominantly with 1 school. That's being expanded out, and we're now looking at how enterprise advisors could work across the region. We work in a lot more of a remote way now. It may be that they want to do more across other schools. It may be that actually they feel they can offer one thing and offer it well, so let's offer that wider, whereas others, might be working on a more strategic base with 1 school. So there'll definitely be more flexibilities in how that role will be carried out in the future. We're also looking at
GrowthWorks launched an initiative which was Talent Pledge, and we're looking at reinvigorating that and bringing in generally more business volunteers. So whilst not everybody will perhaps be an enterprise advisor, I would like to see us be able to grow the contact list, if you like, of those that can work with schools and across schools in a multiple ways. Thank you.
Vic.
First, can I thank Councillor Carlin for asking almost exactly the question I was going to ask. The one additional piece I would like just to clarify on these, because enterprise advisors, when they're good, they're really, really good. Often they're committed because they're parents in a school. As you broaden this role out so that they can then work across multiple schools, I'm not sure how successful that will carry. So I just offer caution that you still allow people to be linked to one school. They don't all have to become across schools. And can you work with perhaps some of the organisations such as the Federation of Small Businesses, Chambers, for them to amplify your recruitment drive, but in some way where you articulate exactly what an enterprise advisor gets from it? Because an awful lot of people fear it because they're not sure what's involved. And if there's any help we can give, of course, we'll be happy to. That's okay. Thank you.
So I think you've read my plan, Vic, for next year, because we've got working with wider ERBs and BROs as a method of attracting our enterprise advisors. So absolutely, and completely take on board what you're saying, that some people will have an affiliation to a school, or will only be one school they want to work in, and that wouldn't change. What we're looking at doing very much will be in conjunction with what the enterprise advisors needs, desires and wants are.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Laura. I don't see any other hands, and I think this report is also to note, so we don't need to vote on it. So thank you very much indeed. We will look forward to further updates on that work, which is really important. The next item, item 7, I hope, is the Education Cold Spots project. So I am hoping that we now have Paminda online. That's looking hopeful. Yes. Welcome, Paminda.
Good morning, members. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. And apologies for the connection issues earlier today. So this second report from me aims to provide an update on the FE Cold Spots projects in East Cambridgeshire and St Neots. The opportunity to reshape local further education provision to improve the offer for learners and to meet employer skills needs is one of the added values and benefits of a devolved skills system. And the employment and skills strategy identified 2 FE cold spots as part of the district level SWOT analysis within the strategy, and also captured the aspirations of the 2 districts. Funding of up to 4.9 million from gain share was allocated, subject to board approval, to scope and to potentially pump prime the projects if they are viable, and also leave a further investment from DfE and other funders. The potential projects will make provision for the growing 16 to 18 cohort, as has been projected by Cambridgeshire County Council in their work on pupil numbers. Local post 16 and 19 provision for SEND young people, adult education and workforce skills development, working in co-design with local businesses, as well as being civic institutions in their respective districts. So this report highlights the progress that has been made to date in capturing the views of local stakeholders through the 2 local advisory groups that were convened, which includes constituent councils, FE colleges, academies, business representatives, and community organisations. However, the report also highlights that progress has stalled and has been slower than envisaged. And this is due to officer capacity challenges within the combined authority. And these challenges are being addressed by the Executive Director for Economy and Growth. So revised milestones are set out in the report, with the next milestone being the commissioning of a suitable consultancy firm to undertake a feasibility study for the projects, and if viable, the development of strategic outline business cases for the project. While the larger FE Cold Spots infrastructure projects are being developed, there has been co-production with local partners, and that has resulted in the combined authority brokering smaller local projects that will build capacity, and these are highlighted and referenced in the report as well. So we've had the St Neots Citizens Hub, the partnership that was brokered between St Neots Initiative and Evolve Your Future, one of our adult education and multiply training providers. The SOAM Skills Hub, which is a partnership between Beaver Arts, West Suffolk College, and the WEA, and also wider discussions with the WEA, who are a national adult learning provider, to invest in Cambridgeshire and provide provision here. So a further report will be brought to committee and to board to request carry forward of the gain share funding, given the slippage in the timeline, and also for the feasibility study to be presented once completed with the identification of strategic options. Thank you, members, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Paminda. I think there will be some questions on this, and I'm going to just start off by saying that I'm quite disappointed that this is the position that we're in on this one, because I think we were pretty clear as a committee that this was a priority, and it doesn't appear that any significant work has happened on this in the last 6 months, and that is actually quite disappointing. Lynn, I think you were going to speak.
Yes, I would agree with that, because it is important to either to get to the stage of the feasibility study and to find out if there is a need for these colleges at all, because that's obviously the impact it will have on the students and whether there are people out there that actually need this. That's terribly important for us to discover, because otherwise we're wasting our time, aren't we? So they need to get on with this study as much as anything. Could I ask several things about this? Because I'm very much aware that Cambridgeshire Skills, that used to be obviously coupled up with Peterborough, when they actually tried, for example, with the St Neots side, they actually tried to get people engaged in St Neots in there in an FE college situation there, and it didn't work. Now, that's what I've been informed only recently, and I thought I'd better raise it here, because obviously, if the people who are doing this evaluation don't know that, they probably won't look at what has happened in the past, and which brings me to the question of who's going to be doing the evaluation, and which consultant are we going for, and will it be possible for people in this skills committee and my skills officers, not so much me, to actually see what the tender says, because inevitably the money that's being spent here is going to affect all the other FE colleges around, including the Cambridge Regional College and presumably the West. I think it's West Norfolk, West Suffolk one. But in any event, they're all going to be wondering what's happening, and I just thought I should ask whether we could see these tender documents and at least talk to this person who's evaluating this as well, to make sure that it's being looked at, because the evidence of demand is hugely important, isn't it? Definitely in both places. I've picked on St Neots because that's what I was told recently, but the same is true in East Cambs, of course, as well. I mean, we have got things going on in Peterborough, as you know, and looking for money in Peterborough for the Peterborough College. It's not getting it for its green subjects, the environmental subjects it wants to do, because it needs more money. So I'm bound to be asking this question to make sure that this is money that's going to be spent well. So that's the first point, probably for Parminder just to sort of comment on. I'm not expecting anything in depth on that, but just to make sure that we can be involved in it somehow. And I've got another question, if you don't mind, Jeff.
Do you want to ask the other one now as well, and then
Well, if you want me to, yes, by all means. Because I was looking at the hubs, which I think are very good. I was unfortunately, because I wasn't well, I couldn't go to the opening. There was one at the near Citizens Hub. I think I was invited to go and have a look at it, but I wasn't able to go. And I think that they look like excellent ideas to me, and how it's going to be working, and at Soham. And there's one in Ely as well. But I thought that the FE College the situation was for 16 to 18-year-olds. Not necessarily, they do some adult provision, but not a huge amount. But the 16 to 18-year-olds, are they being engaged in these citizens' hubs as well, or not? Because obviously, if they're not going to be any evidence in the meantime for what may happen in the FE colleges for the 16 to 18-year-olds. And I think that's, that was important as well. That's more evidence base that we can look at to decide whether they're needed. And just, I suppose, I'm not wishing for cold water on things, but I do think it's important we don't have another IMET situation. That's all up. And those that understand that, I think it's terribly important, because it's so important for the CPCA that we don't. And that we have something that we really need. We've got people out there wanting to attend.
Thank you. I will certainly come back to Paminda on the hubs question. I think on the IMET point, I don't think that I'm quite sure that everybody in the combined authority will be extremely keen to make sure that we don't have another IMET situation. And I think that the point about the work on the cold spots is absolutely to establish what is needed. And I don't think that any decisions have been made about how that might be delivered yet. So the critical point is to understand the need and how that might best be met.
Right.
Paminda.
I think the point about the points that you're making, Councillor, is I think we absolutely agree in terms of evidencing the demand, first of all, and secondly ensuring that the wider stakeholder voices inform the approach as part of the feasibility study. So just to assure members, and that's the reason why we set up the local advisory groups, in order to steer that process. So just to assure you on that local voice piece, that is key. The second point around visibility of the tender documents, absolutely, we can report that as an action for something that can be shared with members. And the point that you was making about officers having the conversations with the appointed consultancy firm once they're in place, again, absolutely, that's something that we can ensure happens through the local advisory groups. The specific point about Cambridgeshire Skills and their provision not working, I think we need to investigate and understand what the offer was, and the reasons why that was unsuccessful. And then the other question about 16 to 18-year-olds and access to the Citizens Hubs. So the Citizens Hub is a bottom-up project working with a local community organisation within St Neots, who have identified a specific gap for the local community around, and it is focused on adults. However, that's not to say that the drop-in facilities could not be accessed by 16 to 18-year-olds, and certainly that organisation has a history of working with young people and expertise in this area. So that is a possibility, but these hubs are not a substitute for the FE cold spots program that we're talking about. They are to supplement any potential provision, but also to provide access to wider employment and skills opportunities in the meantime, because the FE cold spots projects, if they are viable, is a much longer timeline in order to develop those, to look at strategic options and identify sites, and so therefore it's important that we have something in place, certainly from an adult education perspective, in those communities. And these initiatives are a bottom-up approach, and as part of our our approach to partnership working, I think it's important for us to respond accordingly to those community-led initiatives to develop these hubs. I hope I've answered all the questions, Councillor Ayres.
You did. I think you did. Thank you.
Thank you, Paminda. I've got Ben next and then Nick.
Thanks very much. Hi, Paminda. Good to see you. So I was able to make it to the Citizens Hub, so I'm a ward member for St Neots, and yeah, Citizens Hub, really exciting new offer for the town. It looks more like a sort of trendy cafe, perhaps a sort of a co-working space, you know, and I think that's really great to have something that breaks out of that mold of sort of education institution. It's great to hear Paminda say that it's not a substitution for the FE offer that's being sort of, you know, investigated. I totally agree. I think that's the start of something interesting, but it's certainly not, from my point of view, you know, the answer to all these issues. And I think that, you know, the team that's put together Citizens Hub would recognise that that's kind of the beginning of a journey. In the report, I'm really delighted to see discussion about an anchor institution on St Neots High Street. I mean, it looks like that's come from my colleagues at HDC, so I'm glad we agree with ourselves on that point. But I think there's a real opportunity. There's quite a lot of significant empty units. So we've lost quite a few of our high street banks. And, you know, if in my mind, what's going to fill those gaps, it's hard to say. But actually, maybe a distributed FE offer in our high street would just tick a load of boxes, pull together lots of strands in a really positive way. It mentions about, you know, so the point I highlighted is about, it says if appropriate demand is evidenced, and that's obviously key, but I wonder how that question will be framed. We've talked about Cambridge skills not working in St Neots. I don't remember that specifically before I got involved so much in politics, perhaps, but I think the key is framing the question correctly. So it's not, the question shouldn't be, you know, do you want an FE college in your town? Because people might have preconsidered ideas what that looks like. So I guess what question I'm hoping we'll ask, and maybe you're way ahead of me on this, is, you know, what are your work aspirations and what's stopping you from, you know, tapping into those and, you know, realizing those aspirations. And I think the FE offer could be something really quite radical. I really like the way that the Citizens Hub in St Neots doesn't look like a education establishment, and I think there's much more we can do on that front, perhaps looking at sort of skills shares and mentoring, and going back to the conversation we had earlier before this meeting about, you know, the soft skills, the social skills, the transferable problem solving skills. Those are the sort of things I'd love for us to investigate. So I think as we ask these questions, I'm really keen that we go back to the base level of what are the things people want to do, and how can we unlock those opportunities. Thank you. There wasn't really a question in there, Paminda, but I mean, if you've got any thoughts, I'd be happy to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I will go back to Paminda, but I also think it's important that we don't get too carried away with nice ideas on this. We do need the evidence base. Paminda.
Agreed.
Yeah, just to reiterate that point that you just made, Chair, about the evidence base, and also acknowledging in terms of how you know the methodology whereby that evidence is gathered, and just to say that that we now have the census data as well, and we have the you know, wider sources of data than when the original project initiation document was developed for this. And there is work within the county council looking at those pupil projections that's underway. So the evidence base, if you like, is the quantitative analysis, but also the qualitative side of it in terms of the local aspirations and looking at the right strategic fit. And just to reiterate that the Citizens Hub is a touch point. It's not the FE Cold Spot project, but it just was an opportunity, as you say, to test a different approach that was innovative and different, and to use the leverage of the combined authority to deliver social value in a way that benefits local residents that we haven't done before. So just to reiterate that, but there's more work to also be done with the housing developers in St Neots as well, and the academy proposers to really scope out what the art of the possible might be.
Ben.
Just to come back, Eddie, thank you for that. And I'm pretty sure Councillor Wakeford, who I'm subbing for, told me specifically don't get carried away with specifics. So I totally take that comment on board. And yeah, but really welcome your response. Thank you very much.
Just following on from Ben and echoing the absolute delight as someone who came from St Neots High Street on my way here today to acknowledge that the presence of a citizens hub is very warmly welcomed. And more grease to your elbow on that, more power to that. I think it's a fantastic resource. And I would acknowledge the work as it bottom up, the community there coming together and working with the combined authority and indeed local councillors to deliver something that is a stepping stone to which I mean, I know we have to have the evidence, but I have no doubt that St Neots is in dire need of a further education college. But I'll await the evidence. I think building on that success and to acknowledge obviously what's already happened at Soham, obviously disappointed that the actual vacation of the mayor's offices in Market Street in Ely was not enough to ensure that we landed the WEA Adult Learning Centre, an organisation which I have a huge amount of respect for. So I'd appreciate if we could get an update as to where we are with regard to landing an adult learning centre in Ely, and if there is anything else that possibly East Cambridgeshire District Council or myself as Mayor could do to help leverage that actually landing to mirror the success, obviously, in St Neots. So a lot of positives there, but to finish, unfortunately, on obviously a bit of a negative. I know you and I, Lucy, will share that frustration about the slow progress on this. I acknowledge, in amongst many challenges that the combined authority has had, it has been of to some acknowledgement. I'm glad you've managed to get this far, and obviously with the hubs, that's certainly a starting point. But I think as an organisation moving forward, I would really like to see this now become an absolute priority. And I did wonder, and maybe you can help me, Lucy, is this a standing item? And is this something that maybe we should have as a regular item where I know I will be asking the questions, but certainly for everybody else who's representing other areas around the area we cover, to keep coming back there to kind of, I think the phrase in politics is using holding feet to the fire, which is our own senior officers to ensure that they do have the right capacity and they do help move this project on. So there's a question in there and one to you as a chair.
Thank you, Nick. I think it certainly needs to come back to the next committee. I think it hasn't necessarily been a standing item, but I think we have had it at the last two committees, and we definitely will want to have it on the agenda for the next one. And I would very much welcome your support in holding feet to the fire on this. And I suspect that you and I will have a meeting before the next meeting to make sure that the action that is needed to move this forward happens. Because I think at the last meeting we were told that quotations were being sought for consultancy, and I would very much have hoped that we would have moved beyond that still being the case at this meeting. So I think there will be a certain amount of follow up behind the scenes on this one. Okay. In regard to the question,
in regard to the landing of an adult learning centre in Ely, is there any more progress that they can add on about alternative premises being sought? As I say, having given up the mayoral's office, I know that was an opportunity. Is there anything else we could do?
Is there any feedback on that that we can have? If not, we can pick it up after the meeting.
Just to say that that East Cambridgeshire District Council officers are helping in order to helping with that particular matter, and we'll keep you abreast in terms of any developments.
Thank you. Perhaps we could ask for a written note after the meeting on that one, because I think many of us would like to check that that is being pursued as quickly as it could be. So thank you. Yes, sorry, East Cam.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say to Vinda, thank you for the evaluation that's going to be done with Viva Arts and the 30,000, I believe, that is going to be allocated to carry out the evaluation. My only concern is that this is probably going to take another 6 months, even when we get started. and everything seems to take an enormous amount of time. And, we're going to be into another financial year before we've actually done the evaluation and done something about it. So time goes by so quickly, and we have our feet stuck to the ground, and we don't move forward at a pace that suits everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I don't see any further comments. We will have another update on this at the next meeting because I think it's important that we keep checking on the progress on this one. Thank you very much, Paminda. Again, I don't think a vote is required on this. I'm just going to check. No. And we will move on to the skills boot camps, which is going to be introduced by Melissa. Thank you.
Hello. First time. Thank you. Good morning, just still members. So yeah, I'm introducing agenda item 8, which is the Skills Bootcamp paper for the 2024-25 financial year. So the purpose of the paper really, as you already know, grant areas are in receipt of Skills Bootcamp funding annually. So we do need to submit proposals to Department for Education on an annual basis. And the Department of Education have invited proposals from grant areas to be submitted by the 30th of September, with the expectation that areas will then receive confirmation of their funding for the following financial year around late November is the expectation from DFE. The proposals are required to outline the amount of funding that we'd like to secure for the next financial year, with an indication of the types of courses that we'd look to fund across the region. So with that, the purpose of the paper is for the Skills and Employment Committee to recommend that the Combined Authority Board approves the submission of the grant proposal to Department for Education for the Skills Bootcamp funding for the next financial year. And in addition to that, there's a recommendation for the committee to recommend that the Combined Authority Board delegates authority to the Executive Director for Economy and Growth to procure and enter into award or extend contracts for the next financial year, obviously with the subject to securing the funding, and with the view to look at procuring any further provision in February 2024. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the skills boot camps. So the Combined Authority secured 2.8 million funding for the current financial year. We are looking to propose a similar value for the next financial year. And with that enables us really to offer a suitable range of skills bootcamp provision across levels 2 to 5, and also across several types of sectors, from digital, technical, and also use of 30% flexibility that we now have with skills bootcamp funding, to enable us to offer courses suitable to our region that may not necessarily be suitable to other regions. And I just wanted to note that we have added in a table within the paper just around performance. So we are performing well under the previous financial year of funding. You'll see from the table that the current report from DFE shows us as 8th out of 21 in the grant areas, and that is based on the job outcomes that we're working with the training providers to secure for the learners who have completed the Skills Bootcamp courses. And on job outcomes, I just wanted to highlight really, because that is a key measurement of performance. The job outcomes isn't just about securing new jobs, it is also about working with employers who want to upskill existing members of staff. So it can also be about helping those employers to grow their workforce using their existing staff and developing their own skills and knowledge to grow business that way. And it can also be for those who are self-employed, and the self-employed can actually access full funding. And those self-employed outcomes will be based on has that self-employed person been able to secure new work or grow their business in a way that's been able to use the skills and knowledge that they've learned on the bootcamp funding. So it's not just about new jobs, it is also upskilling and growing business that way as well. And then just wanted to highlight really that securing the further funding will just enable the continuity of that provision, including possible contract extensions to existing suppliers where that provision is still needed, securing new suppliers and procuring new courses, and also enabling continuity of service from the Combined Authority Skills Bootcamp colleagues. Thank you. Members, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Eileen.
I'm looking at the table you've set out. I note that the CPCA has a 14% dropout rate. Is there any particular reason? I notice it's sort of mid-range compared to the other grant areas, and is there any particular reason? Would that dropout rate and also the actual versus original plan starts of 31%, could that affect the provision of a grant in for the next financial year?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So just on the starts first, that percentage would actually increase on the next data that we receive from DFE, because we actually varied the start target to 845, I think it was, for that financial year. So that percentage would actually increase on the second round of data that we received from DFE. This is quite a new table actually that they've implemented, and I think it's quite useful for us to see where we are. And on the dropout rate, so we're below the key performance indicator on the target for that, which is 20%. So we have stayed below that rate. Some of the drop off, it's various reasons. If I'm honest, some is due to learners securing either positions prior to completion of the course, and so we're not always able to claim the completion. It's varied sort of reasons.
Thank you very much. So just quickly to say, sounds like a really good project, and we'll happily support the motion. Really happy that self-employed people are included in this as well. I don't know if that's policy nationally, but it's really great that, recognizing that many people who are self-employed are part-time or, not really doing the work that they're necessarily looking for. I was equally fascinated by this table. There's so much variety in the figures across the various regions. And so I was just curious to know, possibly not now, but, whether there's any sort of useful insights we can get from sort of digging deeper into those numbers. So I won't pick anything in particular, but whether there's variance within CPCA or within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough by provider or course or age group or more local area, and what some of the other regions in the country are doing differently to get some of them significantly better results. I'm sure the outliers, there'll be stories behind those, and just so there's anything we can learn from those figures.
Thank you. So as part of sort of putting together the proposal for next financial year, there is some analysis going on with per course provision of how each course is performing against various sort of target indicators. You can sort of pitch these figures, I suppose, how you want to really in terms of performance. I think the Department for Education are very focused on the job outcomes because that is the part of the reason for the funding. And I think what I would like to say as well on the table is these figures will be coming in up until January 2024 for this particular wave of funding. So there is still quite a lot more to come on the outcome side, and also on our completions. That completions percentage will increase because this data is dated back from May, so there is a lag on the data. So there will be quite a few increases within there as well.
I think a lot of my team understate the work that they do, and I did want to do a big thank you to Laura earlier on the work that she's doing on careers. Likewise with Liz, she's very well networked. She engages with a number of different grant areas. Some will be based on new providers coming into this area, not understanding what's required of them, so that it is still quite a new policy area. We're very well networked. We're working with a range of different people, also sharing intelligence on providers as well, just so that we get better. And as Liz has said, the fact that we're eighth is we're doing well, and we're continuing to put that effort in to make sure that we increase performance going forward.
Thank you. Yes, very much support that. James and then Lynn.
Yes, it would be interesting to know what these numbers on the grant areas refer to geographically, because we're very good at recruiting people at the start in some areas, but that doesn't tell me whether or not we're talking about the centre of Peterborough or we're talking about Ely as a town. And in order to see whether or not we're pulling enough people in at one end, would be interesting. Geographically, and then to see whether or not we on the ground should be doing more to encourage people to start. So if we know geographically what we're talking about, we can do something about it to help.
Thank you. Yes, so we do know geographically learners sort of postcode areas. I think there might have been on a previous paper a breakdown of some of that as well. We can look to incorporate that probably going forwards. But yes, we do know geographically and we can look at that.
So could we have a breakdown?
Yeah, so yeah, we can take that as an action potentially and look at the breakdown.
Can I just add though that I think in quite a lot of the courses, these boot camps are online courses. So actually, while it will be interesting to look at the breakdown of the geography of where people are living, it won't necessarily tell you how they've learnt about that course, where they've accessed it, and or where it's delivered, because a huge amount of this is being done sort of through employers or through other networks and online. But we can definitely take that as an action to add it to make sure that it's in the next. I mean, this paper is asking for the committee's support to bid for the next wave of funding rather than. And although it's got some information on what we've done before, but mostly it's looking forward rather than looking back. But the next time we look back, we can definitely try and include that. Lynn.
I was going to ask exactly the same question about the geography, because there can't be 21 combined authorities, for example, in grant areas. I don't think there are separate combined authorities. I don't think there are that many. Yeah. I think the breakdown within our combined authority is what we really need to know. I mean, I actually did hear before I came in, and I think I've heard this before, that in Peterborough, although both the City College and the Peterborough College, which the Peterborough College is large, went out to their employers to see whether they were interested in it, and they could hardly get anybody interested at all. Now, that may have been something to do with the sort of cost of living crisis and everything that was going on when this started, when this was back in 2023. I don't know, and probably they could go back again if they were encouraged, because I was wondering what was happening in Peterborough with skills boot camps at all, and I wondered who was delivering these online courses and whether there was anybody local or whether they were all national enterprises, for example, who were doing this. Because obviously when it's online, as you rightly say, when you're delivering a course, you can be in Sicily and deliver a course nowadays. But so I wondered how much it was doing for our local providers as well, I guess is the point I'm making. So, I mean, you can either tell me now or come in later.
So it's just to say that the grant area providers are also LEPs as well. So it's not just combined authority, but the data is anonymous. So we only know where we rank. We don't have the details of the other areas. So we don't have that, so we can't share that. In relation to providers, so IEG, Peterborough College, they have actually it's all live now, isn't it? Yeah, they've bid for additional boot camps, and so therefore IEG are actively engaging with boot camps and are growing their provision. So you do have one of the main colleges in your area delivering them.
Um, Thanks. And I just wanted to add as well, so we will provide the breakdown of the geographics, but I do know sort of offhand that the actual residents, the learner engagement has been really positive in the Peterborough area.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to ask a question of my own, which relates to the so we're bidding for more funding. I think it's extremely helpful that this is coming to us before that bid has to go in. That there's been a little bit more of advanced warning about that this scheme will be open again, because I know that in the past some of the issues with this have been the very short timescales that money has been made available and then expected to be spent. So it feels as if that's a little bit better than it was, which is great. My question really is, we're bidding for a similar amount of money that we had last year, but my perception is that knowledge of these programs is gradually trickling out to the people who might want to be taking part in them. If we end up with more people wanting to do boot camps that we have bid for funding for, will there be capacity to allow more learners to do these courses? Or is I know we are very nervous about bidding for money that we then can't spend and have to send back, and we don't want to be doing that. But equally, I don't want us to be underbidding. So could you just outline why you've picked that number? Thank you.
Thank you. Totally agree with the timescales. They have given more notice with that, so that's good. I think combined authorities and LEPs have fed back quite heavily on timescales. So then, yeah, with the funding side, DFE have been quite sort of welcoming in that if we do find at any point that we have sort of more engagement coming in than what was anticipated, to speak with them, to work with them. They can look at if there's funding sort of elsewhere that can be moved around. They're sort of open to the conversations. So it's yeah.
Thank you. That's really reassuring and really helpful. Thank you. Sam.
Thank you. This is slightly off topic from the bid itself, but I wondered about the figures for the kind of the cost to employers when we have a co-funding situation. I think paragraph 3.4, and whether they're set nationally or whether those are figures that they're national, are they? Okay. Yeah, because if there were figures we decided on, I was going to ask if kind of we agree with them. Do we think they're the right figures in terms of encouraging employers to send employees to upskill versus actually, making a fair contribution? Or is that something we need to feed back and kind of say we need more flexibility on that?
Thank you. And sorry, the nod wasn't to the yes. They're not nationally set. Sorry. So we are currently sort of engaging with a number of providers and also areas in terms of grant areas around course costings and what they may look like. We've got a number of providers that are already delivering with us, and we know what course costings look like in that sort of term. But so unlike things like your apprenticeships where you have funding bands, there aren't necessarily funding bands sort of nationally for skills boot camps. But a number of providers do deliver nationally. Yeah.
I think you've missed the question there. So in terms of the proportion, the percentages, they are set nationally. So whilst we go out to competitive procurement in terms of the actual total price of the course, what the employer pays, that is set nationally. That's not down to us.
Sorry, yeah, in which case I guess my second question therefore was, do we agree that those figures are set correctly, or is that something we are able to feed back and ask for more flexibility on?
So those figures have moved, haven't they? So originally, I think it's more generous than what it used to be. And that's something I don't have enough detail, but we can come back to you on whether or not we see that as a blocker for why people might not engage.
Thank you. Vic, and then I might draw this to a close, but
Just very quickly, I think the funding that employer contributes about 10% if they're an SME. I think it's very small. I don't think it's excessive. And if actually they're doing this for free, they'll value it slightly less. So I wouldn't go below a certain figure. You pay for something, you value it.
absolutely. I have a feeling that more of the reason people don't want their employers to do this is the employee time, which is always a cost for any employer asking people to do training, but it's definitely in the interest of the wider economy that employers do allow their employees to do training. So right, I think we've had a good discussion. Thank you very much. This one does require a vote. So if I could have a proposer and seconder for this paper, that would be very helpful. Thank you, Ben. We'll be happy to propose it, and Sam to second. That's fantastic. All those in favour of the recommendations, if you could indicate. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry, with the exception. Yeah. Yes. Lovely. Thank you. Wonderful. We will move on to item 9. Thank you very much, Liz. And this is the budget and performance report, which will be introduced by Bruno. Welcome, Bruno.
Yes, we're here. Hello, nice to see you all. So, as usual, we speak about numbers for a bit, but not very long, I promise. Also, at the end of it, my manager, Rob Emery, is coming to speak with you all of us about MTFP. So, we keep this part shorter so we have more chance to speak about the future and what we think is good for us going forward as well. So, as you can see, the first table that you have on the report is the revenue and income is the revenue table. This shows that we have received income to date of £13 million. There wasn't a budget to date just because it was planned to arrive later in the year, but that's fine. We know that we were going to have it. Overall, for the year, we had budgeted £20,300,000, and we are now expecting to receive only £18,300,000. The major variances of it are the biggest variance is the skill boot camp wave 3. That's because by the end of last financial year, we had less people taking part to it than we were originally planned. So we were not going to complete the full program as originally planned, and we will be behind. And that's the reason why, of course, we will not get the same amount of money back from the government. Likewise, Multiply didn't spend as much as we planned during last year, so £415,000. What means is that the amount of revenue income that we were expecting to receive this year will be reduced by this amount, as the FE is assuming that we already have it and we will use it throughout the year. Likewise for level 3, AB level 3, so this is free courses for job. In relation to cost himself, we spend just under £1 million compared to what we were planning to spend. That is mostly phasing of the different type of product. Yeah, and the major variances there is the free courses for job, but we know we're going to spend it. As you can see, in fact, if you look at the forecast, the only area that we are expecting to forecast down on expenditure is boot camp weight 3 again, because we were for the same reason why income is down. That's the full thing, and then there is, of course, the development of the medium-term financial plan that is Rob area. So, if you don't mind, I pass you over to Rob. and then we'll take a question later if it's fine. By
Thank you. Rob is there on screen. Hooray. Hello, Rob.
Morning, Chair and Committee. Nice to see you. As Bruce said, as the paper sets out, September really starts the kick-off of the Combined Authorities business planning cycle in earnest to update our budget and medium-term financial plan for the next 4 years. As part of that, officers are working through September to do the first phase of that, and that's making sure that our baseline MTFP budgets and forecasts are updated to reflect today's world rather than where we were 6 to 12 months ago when we set the budget and medium-term financial plan last year. Whether that's inflation effects, funding announcements from government, or changes to learner behaviours and uptake. The outcome of that, the end of September, we aim to have what we refer to as a recosted medium-term financial plan. So it's the same as last year's plan in terms of what we're delivering and what's in it, but it shows the real cost of that updated for changes since last year. And that's to provide a baseline so that the combined authority can see where we are, what our resources are, what our commitments are, to then consider any other potential investments and savings. And that's really where this report comes in. So we're working with committees, with leaders, with officers throughout September and then onwards through the business planning process. And we're looking for proposals for savings and investments, along with any threats and opportunities that both members and officers want to highlight. And this is the committee's first opportunity to look at what's currently in the next 3 years of the committee's purview, and where they see issues potentially arising or where there's opportunities that should be looked into, and feeding that back and giving steers to the officers and also to your chair, as she represents you in leaders meetings. We go through this process as to what should be considered when we're bringing forward both the skills agenda and as part of the wider combined authorities agenda. Really, the next step following this is that in November, we'll come back to you following the input from all the committees. That'll go up through your chairs in leader strategy to be considered both within the recosted MTFP, whether there's an inclusion of any specific suggestions. And then in November, you'll get this again, but with the next 27-28 included, and some of those more widely accepted threats, opportunities and investments may be included at that stage ahead of the draft budget being included in November. So really this is an opportunity to look where it looks like you're going and highlight any concerns you have about that to myself and to the officers that support you on a normal basis to be considered through this process. We're obviously here and happy to answer any questions to inform that thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. So, Lynn.
Thank you. Can I just say that as I understand it, Multiply has been extremely popular in the Peterborough area, and we've got a lot of people wanting to do it. And yet apparently it says it was a slow start. So is that elsewhere in the county? Because I do know that I keep being told by the colleges that they're getting a lot of people want to do it. Which I think is a good thing, of course. And that may reflect what's happening in education or something like that. But the fact is, that's what's happening. So if I could just ask that first of all, because I would like to think that if there's any money left over, that there might be some available for people who've done well and could do more. I mean, I think you check with that in any event list, don't you, all the time, if you can hand any money over. But that, as I say, that's my understanding. So could I ask about that?
So Multiply was quite a short turnaround from being able to get the scheme mobilised, and so therefore there was a shorter window to deliver. So whilst engagement has increased over recent months, at the beginning it was a slow start. That money has gone back. That's been taken off of our allocation for the second year. So therefore we can't use the money due to the slow start, because that money has therefore been taken off of our allocation for this year. So whilst we've seen a huge increase in participation because of the short timescales, we did have a slow start. So that is correct.
but that won't continue because we're continuing with multiply. Hopefully, good. That's excellent. And could I ask one more thing about I think whether it falls into your 4.4, the medium-term financial plan, and I just wondered where the improvement fund, the local skills improvement fund, appears on the list, and if it doesn't, why not? And should it? And things like that.
So the local skills improvement fund is not our money. So therefore that will go direct to the colleges. CRC, Cambridge Regional College, are the lead college. So they will be in receipt of the funds and they will distribute the funds to the colleges. So whilst we're supporting in getting that bid together along with the chamber, it's not monies we will receive at the combined authority. It will go to the lead college, which is CRC.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah, so following on a little bit on the same sort of narrative, by my reading of this, there's a potential, you could look at these sums and say there's potentially £1 million which we haven't spent, and we might want to think about we could spend it in a different way. There's a question to Rob would be, is there any limitation on what it can be spent on? I'm assuming it has to be spent within this department about adult education or within skills development. And as a sort of knock on to kind of as a challenge to be bearing in mind that the one thing in the course of today that we've highlighted a frustration about the slow movement in terms of delivering or looking into the process of higher education spot in coal spots like St Neots and Ely. Is there an opportunity that some of this underspend could be used to ensure that we do speed up the delivery of that particular work stream? If it indeed is one of the reasons why we haven't moved on because of lack of capacity, do we need the staff? I don't know how that works.
I'm going to chip in and then come to Rob. My understanding is that that's money that we're just not going to have, so it can't be reallocated somewhere else. In terms of the cold spots, I don't think the problem is a lack of money. I think the money is there in our budget. The problem is the lack of priority it's been given by our staff, and that needs to change. But Rob can correct me if I'm wrong on either of those things. Rob.
I'm certainly not going to speak to the staff capacity, as that would be entirely up to Chris. In terms of the funding, looking at the report that's come to you, the only area of forecast variance at the moment is that Wave 3 boot camps. And that is, unfortunately, as the chair said, ring-fenced specifically to delivery of that objective. It's a specific grant fund that we can't spend elsewhere. I must admit, off the top of my head, I don't know what the conditions are in terms of underspend. Occasionally they're as generous as you can agree with the DFE where to use it elsewhere. In my experience, I think from the prior boot camps, it's a case of we draw it down as we use it, and if we don't use it, we don't get it.
Una, do you want to?
Yeah, as Rob just terminating the sentence by saying, yes, this is only money we get back if we spend it. And as we didn't have that amount of students taking part, we haven't spent it, so we can't get it back. Likewise, we cannot use it for something else because there were ring fence to pay the school that were providing the service.
Please.
Whilst it seems a lot of money, I do want to remind the committee that we were asked to bid high and we were really ambitious with that Wave 3 funds. So that will be returned. But if you look at our performance actually for Wave 3 to other areas, we performed well. We just bid very ambitiously, of which there wasn't the demand at the time, which is why we've now gone down. But that money will not come into our account.
And I think it's important to say that it was, I mean, being ambitious has meant that we have built up that capacity and more stuff is being
And I would
delivered.
add, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. Shoot for the stars. It's always the way.
Ben.
I can make a very similar point, but I think like CPCA handing money back has been a bit of a sort of an alarm bell klaxon, but actually we're talking about $1 million against I think 20 million budget, so 5%, that's a fairly reasonable variation. And, if we go 5% over, it's a bit of a problem. If we go 5% under it, just, it's not ideal, but actually it's pretty close in terms of, we're obviously market forces for the people looking for these courses. So from my point of view, it's not a major concern really.
can I just? I think it is important that we try to get as accurate as we can with our forecasting, and but I also think that this was a brand new scheme where the money was provided with kind of crazily short timescales between bidding and then having to actually spend it. I think that as Bruna said in her introduction, there's been a very, or I can't remember where it was actually. Anyway, there's been a very strong message. Maybe it was Liz about the need for longer timescales and kind of better planning that's gone back from pretty much every combined authority and LEP in the country on these things. They are now listening, so we ought to be able to be more accurate with our bidding, particularly given that the type of program is becoming better known, and we're all getting better at knowing exactly what we're doing. But I think if we were to come back in a little while and have a similar gap, that would be a problem. But I'm not expecting that we will, and I would definitely lay the blame for it in the government bidding pattern, not here.
Scott, yeah, thank you for helping me frame that point. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions for Bruna and Rob. So again, I think this is for noting. So we have noted and commented, and we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Skills and Employment Committee agenda plan. Are there any comments on the agenda plan? I think don't see any. That's excellent. So the next item on the agenda is the UK SPF skills project mobilisation and succession planning for skills brokerage services. And I think on this one, if people want to discuss, I think it's Appendix 2 in detail, we will need to go into private session. But if you don't want to discuss Appendix 2 in detail, we can probably cover this mostly in public session. So can I just have an indication about whether people think they're likely to want to discuss Appendix 2 in detail? In which case we will stay in public session, but if there is a need to move into private session, we will then do that at that point. And I will move to Fliss to introduce this. Thank you, Fliss. Sorry, just because Nitin's going, I do want to, I think it's very important when everyone's still here to say that this is likely to be Fliss's last meeting. I think it will be Fliss's last meeting with the Combined Authority because she is, to my great sadness, leaving us. So I will say this better at the end, but Nitin, just before you go, you might want to say thank you to Fliss, who has been brilliant. We'll move on now. Thanks, Nitin.
Thank you. So it is good afternoon now, and we are on to the final agenda item of the committee. So this paper follows a paper that you received last committee talking about the UK SPF projects, and also outlines the proposals that we have in more detail about how we're bringing to an end Growth Works with Skills, which comes to an end in the 31st of December, and how we will then mobilise into a different funding stream using UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So some of the things that I think hopefully you will have read the paper, will have seen the budget and also the staffing structure going forward. And there are 3 recommendations in this paper which will go towards the Combined Authority Board. So some of the key points to note is that we have 3 new service areas as UK SPF, but they are only 15 months long. So this is a very short period of time. And because of that, we've decided to bring our recommendation is, is to bring the service into the Combined Authority because there is not enough time to go to contract, to mobilise and then to close the programme down. We also faced a number of delivery issues with Growth Works with Skills, and so therefore would also like to see it almost as a pilot for how could we operate with the skills brokerage service being within the Combined Authority too. We've made a number of changes within the Combined Authority skills team, and the model that we're proposing will actually really link in nicely, and I think we'll get a lot more value and a lot more activity by the model proposed within Appendix 2. One of the things that whilst it's a universal service, we will be targeting the funds, the activities to where there is most need. And so we know through all of the data that we have in Fenland and Peterborough and in certain wards in other areas that we have more of a skills shortage, and the level of skills qualifications are lower. So we will be targeting uh, the the service whilst it is a universal service to all. So there are three key parts. One is around supported internships. We had a program delivered through CRF previously in Fenland and Peterborough that was really successful. We are taking forward our ambition of an all-age career service, and this funding will help align that and make sure that we have an offer which is easily accessible. And then the part which is to continue the service of Growth Works with Skills is looking at a skills brokerage model as well. And that is where we have the TUPE implications. I don't know how much I can talk about in detail, but there is likely to be a couple of redundancies if there isn't natural wastage with Growth Works with Skills. However, we expect that to be very limited, and we are hoping that the majority of people who are working in Growth Works with Skills will have the opportunity to transfer into the combined authority because there is a similar service, and so therefore we are bound by TUPE regulations and law. We hope to get the service up and running as soon as possible, and so therefore what will happen as a result of this paper, it will go to Combined Authority Board. Assuming everybody is in favour of the recommendations made, then we'll go into very detailed, quick operational plans with existing personnel in Growth Works with Skills and also in GrowthCo to try and make a smooth transition for the number of employees that there are. Because the project again is such a short time frame, we're planning on keeping the branding. So Growth Works with Skills would just be slightly changing the service offering that we have. I think they're the key points to note. If there's, I will obviously take any questions or any further points of clarity.
Thank you very much, Fliss. Sam.
Thank you. If I could just first of all say how pleased I am that partnership working with the Regional Learning has been included, because I know that's something I've banged on about quite regularly. It's a brilliant project that Cambridge City Council leads on. I'm really pleased that that's been included here. My question just relates to the Growth Works with Skills branding, because I think you touched on a bit there, Fliss, but we've had concerns in this committee about delivery from Growth Works with Skills for quite a while. And really, I guess I'm just looking for some reassurance that the business and employer communities do have confidence in that branding and that that is underlying the decision to keep it. Thank you.
Sorry, one point I missed, and which should help if I wrote things down, is we have worked with all of your economic development officers throughout the whole of this process, and they have been involved in the development of the proposal that we bring to you. And we did ask all of the constituent authorities as well around the brand. The perception that we have for the brand is it's not known well enough. So I don't think there are negative connotations with employers around the brand itself. It's just not known enough. And so therefore, we believe by trying to push the brand out more, that it isn't a negative association with the brand, it's just not known.
Vic.
Just to follow up on that point, I would agree the brand isn't well known, but businesses won't care about these changes. They won't be bothered. It'll all be internal stuff. If you change the name, they'll be, oh, for God's sake, another waste of public money. So I would be inclined to go with what we know and build on what you've already done, because I don't think the brand has negative connotations. I do think it's just insignificant in the scheme of things. But change unnecessarily, especially around branding, I don't think gets well received.
Nick.
Simply, if we just put CPCA Growth Works, literally add that in front of it, surely that in itself solves some of the problem. And I look forward to working with this in-house arrangement. It's certainly something I am pleased to see from a point of view of sort of moving forward. And I think it's something that we may see more of in other areas of the combined authority. I think there is a danger in trying to be too lean sometimes in terms of public organizations. And I don't want to go the other way and become a bloated, self-serving organization that's just looking after itself. But I think the idea that bringing people in who see themselves as public servants, employees who want to align themselves directly with the sort of the mission of a combined authority, and indeed mayoral ambitions, for me, is a good place to be going towards. So I'm grateful for this recommendation in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn.
Yeah, I think probably I was going to raise this business of the brand as well, and I quite like Nick's idea of putting CPCA in front of it, because I think the CPCA has got a good brand across the county. I'm not as convinced about Growth Works, as you all know, because of the evaluations that have taken place before, and I noticed that we're not going to get the evaluation of Growth Works into this committee until March, and by that time, it sounds like everybody will have gone from it in any event. But one of my questions is, will everybody get tupied over, or only certain amount? I'm afraid that I did look at this, but I thought, well, I'm better asking the details in public, really, because looking at a confidential thing won't help us at all. Is everybody going to get tupied over, and then will they be looking into their jobs? Because I think there's quite a lot of people who are in Growth Works, and I believe, but I don't know
Lynn,
how
can I
many.
just say, I don't think we can answer that in public. So if you want to have a detailed
But there's
discussion,
talk of tupiing in the report.
yes, there
That's
is,
why I was
but
that's why I was
and the
asking.
details of that are what we
You
would
can
need
tell
to
me
discuss
later.
in
It
private.
doesn't matter.
Okay, so
It doesn't
if
matter.
you could get some feedback on that after the meeting,
Right,
that would be
but
fine.
I think it's quite well known in the Peterborough area, the Growth Works brand. So, which is why I say I think it needs a little bit of an update, if possible, using the CPCA in front of it, please.
Thank you. I'm sure we can pick that up at some future. I just to pick up on the branding thing. I think one of the issues is that what it does is not something that everybody is kind of 100% aware of, and to start again, it's quite difficult to build up
Yeah.
any kind of knowledge about this kind of
Ben,
organisation. Starting again from scratch probably isn't helpful. Ben.
Thank you. So speaking on the point you mentioned about working with the economic development team, I've sort of specifically sent with thanks from our economic development team at HDC that have really welcomed that discussion and sort of co-creation of this project. I think that's benefiting them as well as the project. So yeah, please pass it up. Thanks is passed on. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands on this item. And this does need a vote from the board, from the committee. So we also have a very small change to the recommendation. So recommendation B needs to be changed to ask a delegated authority to go to the Executive Director for Economy and Growth, which is Richard, rather than to the Assistant Director of Skills, which was Fliss, but who will no longer be able to leave this for aforementioned reasons. So with that change to the recommendation, could I have a proposer and a seconder for this one? I'm happy to propose it, actually. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Sam. That would be great. And all those in favour of the recommendations, if you could indicate now. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Which does bring us to almost the end of our meeting, but I think it is very important that I say what I think will be a very heartfelt thank you to Fliss for everything she's done for this committee over the last 2 years, 2 and a bit years. They've been quite an interesting 2 and a bit years for this committee and for the Combined Authority, and Fliss has been absolutely fantastic in supporting the Skills Committee in particular through that period, and actually has done quite a lot of other work outside the Skills Committee role that she was originally appointed to do, particularly leading some of our wider Combined Authority work on the improvement work that had to take place. So, Fliss, you have our profound thanks for being such a fabulous colleague, and we wish you very, very, very well with whatever you are doing next. So thank you very, very much indeed from all of us. Thank you. And the date of our next meeting is Monday, the 6th of November. I will look forward to seeing you all then. I hope I might see some of you before then, because that seems quite a long way off. Thank you.